Exploring AI security, intent, access, and future challenges. Like and subscribe.
It's almost the same thing with AI. How do you get into the back of that and say, I want you to only have current information. Anything that's older than that, I want you to start forgetting. I want you to start pulling this offline. I mean, I think there's ways. How are you going to manage the full life cycle of AI and the data related to it? That gets a little scary sometimes, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, as you said, you need to be very, very specific and intentional about what data it has access to. And you need to
Hmm.
kind of think about how that data could be used or misused or aggregated and think about it in ways that you haven't done with humans. Like I said, and we find the best way to do that is to observe the behavior of the agent over a period of time and then, deploy the rules as part of that. So start with
Yeah.
visibility, discover agents, register them, and then look at their actual behavior and then look at patterns that are acceptable and put in very strict rules to be applied, for every transaction that agent tries to undertake. That's the only safe way to do it right now.
And I think the difference is when you look at an insider threat from an agent versus an insider threat from an employee, the intent factor is different, you would think, right? The agent doesn't have evil intent or malicious intent. You would think it has good intent. It's always trying to be helpful. However, there may be something behind it or somebody behind it. Or from an insider threat, you're going, okay, did we do a background check on this person before we hired them? You're looking at were they morally compromised in this position. So it does seem that while you look at the same things, like for an agent, I would start off with visibility, like logging. Activity logged, where is it saved? Where is it correlated? And how do I get to it? If I can't do that for an agent, then I have a serious problem. Same thing for a user. If I can't track a user and all these audits that come up, if I can't track the activity of a user from log on to log off and what applications they used, I'm in trouble again. Right. And then I see some of these companies using these agents and onboarding them to HR. Like their UltiPro system has them on as employees and they're subordinates to managers. And so all the authentication authorization, like, does your agent still need this access? So it seems that those models, that GRC type function, do you still need this level access? They just roll that onto the agents as well. And then now you're having to attest for it. I can tell you one time when I was at Wells Fargo, I got handed a list of the access that all 27 of my people on my team had access to. And it was the most cryptic thing. It could have come from an alien ship because it was just mainframe groups that just went, that you had no idea what that meant, what did it say? And the process to go, what is that security access for? It was so difficult. Nobody really knew. So they would just stamp the access, and this is a long time ago, right? Just stamp the access. I just find those access reviews, if you're not doing those agentically, it's like somebody is looking at them, they're reaching out. Hey, I noticed your agent reached out at midnight and did this. Is that normal? I just think you have to have that kind of accountability. And it's like agent on agent that you have to do. And I don't know. How do you kind of implement that? I see is going to be kind of in the future. I don't know.
Well, no, and definitely, absolutely. Our customers have asked us for that, for an org chart that has agents within the org chart, and we do
Already
that.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah. But the hard part about that sometimes is actually getting their human org chart right, as you know, right?
Mhm.
But adding the agents is fine. The issue is though, we need to think about the privileges we give them as in a different way from what we do for humans. So that's where that model falls down a little bit. It's kind of nice to think of them as being under the purview of a human and sort of as a sub organization of the human, and the agents themselves have suborgs. That's all fine, just as long as you don't grant their scopes as broadly as you would a human. Knowing that, as I mentioned, they're super empowered. They're not accountable. They're unpredictable. We as humans are still trying to learn how to work with the unpredictable stochastic nature of these systems. So I love the model of the agentic organization, but I just don't like the primitive old human-based RBAC approach to it. If that makes sense.
It does. It makes a whole lot of sense. And I think that's really the future is how you put your hands around these things. How do you drive them for efficiencies? You're going to have them. You can't be too afraid of them, but implementing them too quickly does introduce additional risk. I definitely wouldn't be implementing or wouldn't ingest sensitive information yet, or I would have enclaves or separated right now and not plan for the agent to figure out what it should have access to and what it shouldn't have access to. That it really needs to be almost like the military. You have classified each of these different levels of classification in the military for NIPRNet and SIPRNet and so forth are really based on what's the impact if that information was to get out. And so
Yeah.
from an HR perspective, if I enclave their data and just say whatever agents I have are specific to that enclave worth of information, then the co-pilot that's outside of that would never know what they're working on. You could still get the power of agentic workflows. You could still get the power of that, but you have to actually get into these architectural segmentations of data. And then what happens on later? They go, hey, well, we want to connect this enclave of data with this one. Well, now you're back in a complexity and so forth. So it's going to start to build, and I really worry about what happens when these systems go offline. Where your help system to reset your password to get back in is an AI based system, and somehow the model crashed and you can't get back in. And we have now gone to pen and paper, so to speak, from an AI perspective. If you remember, I was in banking, they would say, okay, how do you get back to pen and paper? If Hurricane Katrina wiped us out when I was in New Orleans, so how do you get to actually taking transactions over paper and so forth? Well, I think we need to have that concept for AI is how did some of these systems, and I don't think they would survive. They would be so ingrained with an AI system and that if one of those components went down, it actually would be non-functional. I don't know. What do
Yeah,
you think?
and I agree. I'm personally non-functional without my AI agents assisting me, right, at this point. So my IQ drops 50 points if I don't have access to them. So yeah,
Right.
case in point.
Well, look at this. I mean, just when I was talking to you on the screening call, right? I have my AI agent Granola, and I like Granola. It's really good on the notes, and it does a great job. And I tell it, hey, what are some great questions to ask this guy on a podcast? And it came up with 3 or 4, I'd use its judgment. And that was outside of what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to just tell me that's like 4 or 5 subjects where you can do a summarization, do a to-dos, or send an email reply, right? I could have sent an email reply to our screening call. Well, that was its 4 primary functions, but I asked it to do something completely outside of that and just said, hey, based on the transcript, create me a couple questions that would be great for a podcast related to identity. And it wrote 5, 6. It wrote several of the questions that we talked about on this show.
Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Check out the full episode on the Cybersecurity America YouTube channel, Apple, Spotify, or Amazon.